When it comes to dark rides, there's no question that Disney and Universal are the best. But regional parks have a few tricks up their sleeves too. Sure, these regional park dark rides may not be as sophisticated or technologically advanced as the rides we see in Orlando, but let's not discredit them quite yet. Cedar Fair is one theme park chain that is, slowly but surely, proving that dark rides don't need to have an excessive budget to be successful. And we're only at the beginning of what could be a dark ride revolution. Good day everyone, and welcome to Adventures with Parker. In today's episode of Theme Park Parlay, we're going to look back at the history of dark rides at the Cedar Fair parks and discuss what we can expect to see of them in the future. From the classics of the 60s to new attractions set to open this year and beyond, let's talk theme parks. Our adventure actually begins at Freedomland, USA, a short-lived theme park in the Bronx borough of New York City. This park was dedicated to the history of America, with each land representing a different region and period. Unfortunately, Freedomland did not have a long history, and closed in 1964, just 5 years after opening. Most of the rides were sold off to other parks, including San Francisco Earthquake and Buccaneers, both of which found new life at a little park known as Cedar Point. Earthquake arrived at Cedar Point in 1965 and took guests through the streets of San Francisco aboard antique automobiles. Suddenly, guests found themselves in the middle of the chaos and destruction of the infamous 1906 San Francisco earthquake. Buildings shook, sidewalks buckled, and a two-story house slid off its foundation and towards her car, all leading up to a dramatic climax where the city was ablaze. Buccaneers, on the other hand, was renamed to Pirate Ride and opened at Cedar Point near the Blue Streak area in 1966. Riding in floor-mounted pirate ship-themed vehicles, guests were taken through a collection of scenes depicting pirates who were up to no good. Some highlights included a pub scene, a cannon battle between two dueling pirate ships, and sea creatures like the giant sea serpent. Both of Cedar Point's dark rides were manufactured by Aero Development, who would go on to build the ride systems for Pirates of the Caribbean and Haunted Mansion for Disneyland. Of course, Pirate Ride and Earthquake were nowhere near as impressive or as advanced as those Disney classics, but perhaps they did lay down the groundwork for what was to come. And there's no denying that they brought joy to Cedar Point guests for many years. Over on the West Coast, Walter Knott's replica ghost town had been entertaining guests since 1940. Originally envisioned as something to entertain guests waiting for a seat at Mrs. Knott's famous chicken dinner restaurant, the idea eventually grew into a full-fledged theme park known as Knott's Berry Farm. One of the first major amusement rides built at the park was the Calico Mine Ride, which opened in November of 1960. This mine train dark ride is still operating today and takes guests on a journey deep into a mining excavation site on ore cars pulled by a battery-powered locomotive. Along the way, guests would encounter underground lakes, waterfalls, caverns, and animatronic miners. The ride was designed and built by Bud Hurlbut in collaboration with Aero Development, both of whom would return in 1969 to build North America's first log flume, Calico Log Ride. Calico Log Ride, known today as Timber Mountain Log Ride, takes guests through a 19th century logging camp and down two drops, the tallest of which was a 42-foot splashdown finale. Both of these attractions were very impressive for their time, especially considering that Knott's Berry Farm was just a family park. But things did not stop there.
Welcome one and all.
In 1975, Marion Knott, the youngest daughter of the park's original founders, wanted to bring some new life to the park, something that could replace the unpopular Gypsy Camp area. Thus, the Roaring Twenties area was born, complete with the first modern steel inverting coaster, Corkscrew, the Sky Jump, and the original Knott's Berry Tales Dark Ride. This ride was a classic, and some might have even considered it to be on par with the attractions down the street at Disney, which, makes sense. It was designed by Disney Imagineer Rolly Crump after all. Set in the 1920s, Knott's Berry Tales took guests on a wacky adventure to the county fair, where Boysen and Girls and Berry were going to share their delicious boysenberry pies. Unfortunately, the notorious pie thief, Crafty Coyote, was up to no good and stole some of the pies right from under the busy beaver bakers' noses. Thus began a crazy journey through Frog Forest, the Gypsy Camp, Thunder Cave, and even Weird Woods, the home of the weirdos. Wait, not those weirdos, although they are pretty weird. Anyways, you eventually reach the county fair, where Boysen and Girlsen win a blue ribbon for their pies, while Crafty Coyote is locked up for his thievery. Knott's Berry Tales was a beloved attraction and an icon for Southern California. But in 1987, it was replaced by a new adventure.
Over 60 million years ago, the most ferocious creatures the world has ever known mysteriously disappeared. Back, introducing Kingdom of the Dinosaurs.
Kingdom of the Dinosaurs took guests from a professor's laboratory and sent them back in time through the age of cave people, the Pleistocene, and of course, the Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous periods, the age of the dinosaurs. But as all things do, this ride went extinct in 2004, and the show building remained dormant. Meanwhile, another company, Taft Broadcasting, was preparing to open some brand new theme parks. Kings Island opened in 1972 as a relocation of the Coney Island Amusement Park in Cincinnati, Ohio. One of the park's opening day attractions was Enchanted Voyage. This indoor boat ride took guests through a giant TV set featuring scenes of iconic Hanna-Barbera characters from shows like The Flintstones, Scooby-Doo, Yogi Bear, Wacky Races, The Banana Splits, and more. In total, Enchanted Voyage featured over 100 animatronic characters. Now that's impressive! In 1984, the ride received its first major update, this time focusing on a certain group of little blue people. I said little. And we're talking about the 80s here. There we go. Smurfs Enchanted Voyage used the same layout as the original Enchanted Voyage, but the new show scenes followed the Smurfs throughout the year as they escaped the clutches of Gargamel and his sidecat, Azrael. Although both versions of Enchanted Voyage immersed guests into the world of their favorite cartoons, there was nothing overly impressive about the animatronics or special effects that were used. Still, there were classics that are fondly remembered even to this day. But in 1992, the ride would be replaced yet again. This time, the building would be completely gutted, and the water-based system was replaced with an Omnimover attraction called Phantom Theater. Phantom Theater took guests on a tour of an abandoned, dilapidated opera house haunted by the dead. It operated at Kings Island until 2002, when it was replaced yet again by... You know what? Hold on to that thought for now. We have other things to talk about first. Over in Virginia, Taft Broadcasting built a second park called King's Dominion in 1975. Unlike its sister park, King's Dominion did not originally open with a dark ride, but that changed when the park introduced their new addition for 1979, and it was a doozy. That joke will make sense in about 2 minutes. But yes, Lost World Mountain was a whole new area of the park inside a 170-foot man-made mountain containing 4 different rides. Voyage to Atlantis was a small flume ride similar to Pirates of the Caribbean. Actually, the theme did resemble pirates more than it did the lost city of Atlantis. Either way, it didn't last very long and was replaced the very next year by Haunted River. This time, the boat ride took guests through spooky scenes haunted by skeletons, ghosts, mummies, piranhas, and other creatures of the undead. The finale of both versions of the ride featured a small drop out of the mountain. The other major dark ride in Lost World Mountain was Land of Doos. This was a slow-moving ride where guests boarded Jules Verne-inspired mine trains that had the ability to tunnel through the earth to the Land of Doos. As put by Dale Blumfield in a post on the King's Dominion Golden Years Facebook page, Doos was an underground lair inhabited by bulbous, animated hobbit-like dwellers in checkered bib overalls, who did things like push plants out of the ground, manufacture water and air, and other tasks generally credited to a god or deity of some sort. So yeah, they're basically little trolls that make nature happen. The ride's finale went outside the mountain and crossed a wooden bridge past a waterfall. This ride was also replaced and reopened in 1984 as Smurf Mountain. Essentially, it followed the same storyline as Smurf's Enchanted Voyage. Although it was a very unique attraction, Land of Doos / Smurf's Mountain was a maintenance nightmare due to extra wear on the wheels caused by the poorly designed downward slope of the ride path. The other 2 rides were Time Shaft, a rotor ride located within the center of the mountain, and Mount Kilimanjaro, a Himalaya ride tucked into an alcove at the base. Smurf Mountain operated until 1993, and the other 3 attractions closed shortly after it in 1995. Lost World Mountain would go on to become the home of Volcano the Blast Coaster, an Intamin launched inverted coaster that opened in 1998 and closed in 2018. The mountain was deconstructed the following year, truly becoming a lost world of King's Dominion. Let's fast forward a few years to the start of the new millennium. At this time, Kings Island and King's Dominion were owned and operated by Paramount Parks, along with Canada's Wonderland, Carowinds, and California's Great America. Paramount wanted a new family attraction based on the popular Scooby-Doo franchise. And so, they worked with Sally Dark Rides to create Scooby-Doo's Haunted Mansion. Paramount's first installation opened at Canada's Wonderland in the year 2000 and was recognized as the best new children's ride of the year by IAAPA later that fall. Carowinds was next to receive the ride in 2001, followed by Kings Island in 2003. This version of the ride actually replaced Phantom Theater and was called Scooby-Doo's Haunted Castle. Paramount's final version opened at King's Dominion in 2004, although other installations appeared at other parks around the world. In all 7 versions, guests board miniature mystery machines equipped with laser light guns and ride through Ghastly Manor. Along the way, guests can shoot at ghosts and Scooby snacks in a race to rack up as many points as possible. At the end of the ride, a spooky figure known as the Phantom Shadow is caught by the gang and revealed to be none other than DM Ghastly himself, the mansion's owner. He was illegally printing counterfeit money in the mansion's dungeon and dressed up as the Phantom Shadow to scare away trespassers. He would have gotten away with it too if it hadn't been for those meddling kids and a few guests with laser guns. The Paramount parks were sold to Cedar Fair in 2006, and without the rights to the Scooby-Doo IP, the park's new owners collaborated with Sally Dark Rides in 2010 to convert the Scooby-Doo rides to Boo Blasters on Boo Hill. The new story centers on an old manor overrun by ghosts, where the guests are brought in to use their Boo Blasters to eradicate them. The new finale involves an encounter with the lead ghost, Boocifer. Now, something interesting to point out here is that, unless you count Boo Blasters, Cedar Fair never actually built a dark ride for themselves. Pirate Ride and Earthquake were relocated from Freedomland, Knott's Berry Farm wouldn't be under Cedar Fair's ownership until 1997, and Scooby-Doo's Haunted Mansion was a Paramount creation. But that was about to change. On one fateful day in August 2013, Canada's Wonderland held an exclusive event for season pass holders, which I was at, by the way, where they announced their new for 2014 attraction live on breakfast television. Plans for a dark ride in Wonder Mountain actually date back to 2004, but technology and budget limitations caused the design phase of the project to be delayed until 2011. With track designed by Art Engineering and interactive 3D elements designed by Triotech, Wonder Mountain's Guardian is one of the most interesting attractions out there. The ride begins with a small outdoor roller coaster section, then enters the caverns of Wonder Mountain. From here, guests follow the world's longest continuous screen and a character named Stanson on a quest to retrieve the king's lost crown. Along the way, guests use their blasters to fight off enemies and creatures as they travel through a forest, a lake, a draconian city, and finally, to an epic face-off with the Dragon Ormar that culminates with a 30-foot drop on the tallest drop track in the world. During the Halloween season, the ride's film is replaced with Zombies 4D. It's a good attempt for a regional park dark ride, but the ride just lacks in so many areas. First of all, the screens are very noticeable. They're actually blank when you first enter the mountain. And if you're sitting in a backward seat, you completely miss all of the transition scenes. Plus, the effects and accuracy of the blasters has deteriorated significantly over the years. Nevertheless, it began a new initiative created by Cedar Fair's then CEO, Matt Ouimet, called Amusement Dark, a plan to build dark rides for a fraction of the cost as Disney and Universal by avoiding expensive intellectual property rights and repurposing dormant areas of the park. Which brings us back to Knott's Berry Farm. Timber Mountain Log Ride and Calico Mine Train received major upgrades in 2013 and 2014 respectively, which saw the addition of brand new animatronics and updates to their lighting and special effects. Then, in 2015, 1 year after Guardian, the park opened Voyage to the Iron Reef, which was designed by Triotech. But unlike Guardian, it didn't feature any coaster elements and used physical props in its transition scenes, a huge improvement over Guardian in my opinion. Throughout this adventure, guests are enlisted by a washed-up sailor to defeat an army of mechanized sea creatures and their leader, the Kraken Queen, and prevent them from taking over the park and destroying its attractions. One cool part of the ride is that pieces of the park's former attractions can be found throughout the adventure. Although Voyage to the Iron Reef seems like a better ride than Guardian, it was still heavily criticized for being too video gamey and suffered many technical issues in its later years. With 2 rides in the Amusement Dark collection, Matt Ouimet announced that every Cedar Fair park would be getting a dark ride in the near future. Well, 5 years and a new CEO later, that promise has remained unfulfilled. Cedar Fair has not built another dark ride since Voyage to the Iron Reef in 2015. It was seen that Cedar Fair has given up on the Amusement Dark initiative. Or have they? In 2019, Knott's Berry Farm unveiled Calico River Rapids, an update to the unthemed Bigfoot Rapids. Although it's not technically a dark ride, the new animatronics and sets drastically improve the ride and transform it into an immersive experience. Even Bigfoot finally made an appearance on the ride. 2020 was going to be a big year for Cedar Fair. Their flagship park, Cedar Point, was celebrating their 150th anniversary, and Knott's Berry Farm was celebrating their 100th. To celebrate, the parks were set to debut a pair of immersively themed attractions. Of course, COVID-19 happened, and these rides are now opening this year, in 2021. Cedar Point will open Snake River Expedition on May 28th. According to the park's website, this will be a boat ride where guests join Trapper Dan and his band of bandits on a mission to smuggle some important cargo. Again, it's an outdoor boat ride and not technically a dark ride, but it will feature a mix of animatronics, live actors, and elaborate sets to create one fun-filled frontier adventure. And just a few days ago, Knott's opened Knott's Berry Tales Return to the Fair for season pass holders, and the grand opening is scheduled for May 21st. Replacing Voyage to the Iron Reef, Return to the Fair will once again allow the Berry family to occupy the same building that they did all those years ago. Like Voyage to the Iron Reef, Knott's Berry Tales 2.0 is designed by Triotech, and oh my goodness, has that company learned a lot since 2015. For the most part, the ride follows the same storyline as the original, taking guests on a wild journey to the county fair. But this time, guests must use their pull-string boysenberry blasters to collect pies and prevent crafty coyotes' pups from stealing them. Both Snake River Expedition and Return to the Fair seem to get everything right. They immerse guests into the story that they are telling and rely on a bit of park nostalgia. They also do things that previous Cedar Fair dark rides have not. In the case of Snake River, the use of live actors is almost unheard of outside of Disney or Universal. It almost reminds me of the Great Movie Ride. And Knott's Berry Tales strikes a perfect balance between screens and physical sets. So, what comes next? It would seem as if Cedar Fair is once again bringing dark rides to their parks. Mind you, Cedar Point is their flagship park, and Knott's, well, Knott's is kind of interesting. The chain kind of lets them do their own thing, so it's not the best example to look at if you're trying to predict what the company is thinking. But here's what we do know. Cedar Fair wants to create immersive, themed experiences that appeal to the entire family. Recently, we've been seeing more themed areas at their parks, and attractions that aren't necessarily big record-breaking coasters. A perfect example of this is Forbidden Frontier over at Cedar Point. Of course, dark rides fit perfectly into this vision, and if Cedar Fair keeps making attractions that are on the same caliber as the new Knott's Berry Tales, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. Mind you, the pandemic may have shaken up the company's plans, but still, I think we can continue to expect to see new dark rides at the parks. Even beyond Cedar Fair, dark rides are becoming more and more common and more advanced at regional parks. Just look at the Justice League rides at the Six Flags parks. They look phenomenal. I believe that Disney and Universal will always hold the dark ride crown, but regional parks are catching up, and it'll be interesting to see what kind of stories these parks will tell over the next few years. Thank you so much for joining me on this adventure. If you would like to see more theme park discussion videos, plus vlogs from my theme park, travel, local, and outdoor adventures, please consider subscribing. And if you really don't want to miss out on anything, tap that bell icon while you're at it. Off of YouTube, you can find me on TikTok at Adventures with Parker and ADV Parker on all other social media platforms. Until next time, the adventures are calling.